Okay, exercise 9-20, it says, Crispy Fried Chicken bought equipment on January 2nd, 2013 for $21,000. The equipment was expected to remain in service 4 years and to perform 3,600 fry jobs. I guess meaning you can fry 3,600 times. Estimated, right? Estimated, okay.
How do we get to the exercises?
If you go to the back of the chapter, in the review section, you can find all of the exercises. Okay, it says, at the end of the equipment's useful life, Crispy estimates that its residual value will be $3,000. The equipment performed 360 jobs the first year, 1,080 the second year, 1,440 the third year, and 720 in the fourth year. Okay, and basically they want me to prepare a schedule of depreciation expense, accumulated depreciation, and book value per year using all three methods. And the first method they want me to use is straight line. Okay, you see where I highlighted it says straight line. So in straight line, we got the assets cost. Okay, remember the straight line formula is costs minus residual value divided by the estimated life. Okay, so if we got a cost of 21,000 right here, and we have a residual value estimated of 3,000, we have a $18,000 depreciable cost. All agree, right? If I take 21,000 minus 3,000, I got 18,000. So my depreciable costs will not change for all 4 years. Okay? And then the equipment has a 4-year estimated life. It's expected to remain in service for 4 years. So we're going to be dividing by 4. 4 years. Or multiplying by 1/4. Well, however you want to look at it, right? But you know that your rate is 1/4 because we're spreading this depreciable cost out over 4 years. So we're going to charge 1/4 of this depreciable cost to depreciation expense each year. Okay. So basically we need to divide 18, right? 18,000 by 1/4. So that would be 4,500. Cannot see. Okay. All right. Now, before we even start, the book value is its cost. Okay. Now remember how we book depreciation expense. I'll show you real quick, right? When we book depreciation expense, we debit depreciation expense and we credit accumulated depreciation. So this entry would be happening, the $4,500 entry would be happening every year. Okay, and the thing about it is this accumulated depreciation account, which is a contra asset account on the balance sheet, will continue to grow. Okay, every time we make that entry, accumulated depreciation increases. Real quick review question. How come depreciation expense doesn't grow from year to year? What happens to that expense account at the end of each year? That's the hint, right? Remember that expense account is a temporary account, so that thing is going to get closed out to income summary every year. But the accumulated depreciation is a permanent account. It stays on the balance sheet until we dispose of the equipment. When we get rid of the equipment, then we'll get rid of any related accumulated depreciation. Okay, so my accumulated depreciation is going to grow each year. Okay, all the way up till it hits the depreciable cost, right? And at that point, the book value should end up being the residual value. I kind of jumped ahead. I'm having you look at it, right? Because you cannot depreciate this thing down below its residual value. Okay? So let's see here. So if you got a cost of 21,000 minus 4,500, your book value at the end of year one is 16,500. So your asset had depreciated by 4,500. Okay. Now, at the end of year two, if you take your cost, 21,000, I'm always taking my costs, minus the accumulated depreciation of 9,000, you got a book value of 12,000. Okay. And if we keep going, at the end of year three, if you take your cost of 21,000 minus the accumulated depreciation of 13,500, you're going to have 7,500 in book value. Okay. Book value is always cost minus accumulated depreciation. That's the definition of book value. Cost minus accumulated depreciation. Okay. And then finally, I went ahead and I jumped ahead and I figured out the 3,000 for you, but we'll do it again. 21,000 minus 18,000 equals 3,000. So from here you could, that's your schedule, right? You can schedule out your depreciation. You have a depreciation schedule that can be used throughout the life of the asset to help you record do your bookkeeping on this, okay? Okay, now second method is the units of production, okay? And it says, before completing the units of production depreciation schedule, calculate the depreciation expense per unit. Okay, so our asset, we estimate it can do 3,600 fry jobs up here in the sentence, right? So we're going to take cost minus residual value divided by useful life in units. Okay, so it's going to be the same depreciable base, 21,000 minus the 3,000 residual value, but this time we're going to divide by the 3,600 fry jobs. Okay. So that one I'm going to use my calculator, even though you probably could do it in your head because they're multiples of 6, right? You got 18,000 divided by 3,600. Some way you could use your mental math to do that real quickly because they seem to have a lot in common, the 36 and the 18. Anyway, that's just an aside. That's going to be my depreciation per unit. Okay. Now when I build my schedule, okay, I'm still going to list my assets cost of 21,000. And at the beginning, the book value is still 21,000. We haven't accumulated any depreciation, so we don't have anything to subtract from the costs to arrive at the book value. Okay, it's basically cost minus 0 accumulated depreciation. Gives me a book value of 21,000. Okay. Now, we figured that we're going to be going $5 per unit, so that's going to be the same all the way down in depreciation expense, $5 per unit. Okay. Now in this case, what we have to do is we actually have to go in and figure out what the actual number of units, how many actual units occurred during that year for each of the years. So we might as well extract that data from this sentence up here. And it says the equipment performed 360 jobs the first year. So I'll put 360 here. In the second year, it was 1,080. In the third year, it was 1,440. And in the fourth year, it was 720. Okay. So to get the depreciation expense, we're basically going to multiply the depreciation per unit by the number of fry jobs that occurred each year. Okay, so you can either do it quickly in your head, or you can rely on your calculator, and I'll do that. So we'll calculate that for each year. Okay? Right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to show how that accumulated depreciation account grows. So after the first year, you have 18,000 sitting there. Oh, 1,800, I'm sorry, 1,800. After the second year, you're going to have 7,200, because what you're doing is you're taking that $1,800 balance and adding the current year's depreciation expense, right? And then we'll do the same thing. We're going to have 14,400, because I'm taking the previous balance and adding the current year's depreciation expense, okay? And then finally, I'm going to have 18,000. Is that right? Does it come out right at 18,000? Looks like it, yeah? Well, I'll use this just to make sure. Okay, so. And they made it, I think they made it work out that way. You're not always going to hit it right on the, especially with this method, because you don't know how many fry jobs you're actually going to do, right? You might have a real hard year and you don't hardly do any, right? It's not going to depreciate in 4 years. It might take longer. Okay. Now, when we get the book value, remember, we're always going to take accumulated depreciation and subtract it from the cost. Always go back to the cost. So we're going to take 21,000 minus 1,800. Oops, hit the wrong function. Okay. I'm always going back to the 21,000. So 21,000 minus 7,200. We'll go 21,000 minus 14,400. And then finally, 21,000 minus 18,000 will give you the 3,000. And you would stop, right? So say you hit that at, in year 3, you would have already depreciated the equipment. You're not going to go beyond the 3,000. Okay. So that's the thing about this. This is working out too perfectly. It's too closely in line with straight line to really be reality, but they set it up that way. You probably would either depreciate it earlier than straight line or later, not exactly at the same time. Okay, but it works out for our discussion. Question?
Yeah, doesn't this way keep counting each consecutive year? Because
Well, you can't. The thing is, you cannot depreciate down below the residual value. So in any method, you're not going to depreciate it beyond 3,000. That's just a rule for depreciation. You don't depreciate it. You don't depreciate it beyond. See.
how can you do that? Like, can you explain that last part again? Yeah.
Yeah. See. Right. Crispy estimates that its residual value will be residual value will be 3,000. Right. So when you depreciate something, you're not going to depreciate it beyond the residual value. So once this book value hits the residual value, you wouldn't depreciate it any further. You would just leave it on the books at that. Even if you continue to use it, you're not going to charge any more depreciation on this asset. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, finally, the double declining balance method, which is a little different than the first two, right? The first two have more commonalities with each other than the double declining has with any of them, okay? But we're going to set it up. We start out with a $21,000 asset cost, and a $21,000 book value because there hasn't been any depreciation yet. Okay? Now what we do is we take the book value. So in the first year, the book value is the 21,000, and we're going to multiply it by the double declining rate. Now the double declining rate is going to be twice the straight line rate. Right? If you think about it, the straight line rate is 1/4 because it has a 4-year life. We're going to take 1/4 of it per year. Twice the straight line rate would be 2/4, or 2 times 1/4, okay, which ends up being 1/2, right? So you're going to take half of 21,000, okay? So that's going to be 10,500, right? If you take half of 21,000, right, or 21,000, we can do it longhand. We can go 21,000 times 2 times 0.25, 10,500. Okay? If you do it the way they have it laid out. So at the end of year 1, you will have accumulated depreciation of 10,500. Okay? So the book value will be your cost of 21,000 minus 10,500. So your book value ends up being 10,500. So wham, we hit a whole bunch. We depreciated off half of that asset in that first year. Okay. Now, when the second year's depreciation calculation comes along, you're going to use the asset's book value from the beginning of that year, which is 10,500. And you're going to multiply that by the double declining rate, which is 2/4, right? So if you take 2/4 of 10,500, it's basically half of 10,500. So you're going to have $750, right? Wait a minute. 500. Wait. What am I doing? Just do it with a calculator. 5,250. Okay. So now your accumulated depreciation is going to be 15,750. Okay. I'm going to add the current year's depreciation expense to the accumulated depreciation. Okay. All right. Okay. So now my book value will be the difference between my cost of 21,000 minus the new accumulated depreciation of 15,750. Okay. Which is basically half. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. Now, I think they give you a hint somewhere. Didn't they give you a hint? They should give you a hint in this problem because at some point you have to switch to straight line. And the reason is if we do another double declining balance on this thing, so if I took hold on. Okay, I'm going to take it down below 3,000 if I do another double declining balance on this, right? Because if I had another line here and I go, 1/2 times 5,250, I'm going to shave off 2,625. That's going to take my residual value, my book value, down below the residual value. okay? Because I'm going to be left with 2,625. So you're supposed to be switching to straight line for the remaining 2 years, okay? For the remaining 2 years, you would switch to straight line. And let's see how they they give you this here, right? Here, if you went to your help me solve thing, right? Okay. Actually, they got the same, pretty close numbers to what we have, okay? So what happens is I want to find some verbiage for you to read, right? Got it? Okay. Okay, what they're telling me now is you're only going to take enough to get it to 3,000. Okay, so you really don't have to do that straight line switch, because if we were going to take, if we went with double declining, it would take this below. Let me show you how that would work. Okay, if we went with double declining, I would take 5,250, which is the book value, and I would multiply it by 2/4, right, which is 1/2, and I would end up sticking 2,625 in here, right? And if we add that to 15,750, I got a accumulated depreciation balance of 18,375. Now, watch this. If I take my cost of 21,000 minus 18,375, my book value ends up being less than 3,000. Okay, so I am only going to take enough here to take this down to 3,000. Right? I cannot go below 3,000. That's same with the other methods. Okay, so I got to figure out what number do I need to put in here to bring this guy down to 3,000. Nothing beyond 3,000. So the easiest way to do it is take your 5250 and minus 3,000. You can only take 2,250 worth of depreciation expense. If you take any more than that, then you're going to go below. You're going to go below 3,000 in book value, right? Okay, so we add that, right, and that brings you right to 18,000. Oops. Oops. Redo it. And that'll bring you right to 3,000. And you wouldn't have any depreciation in the 4th year. So you could say 0 here, right? And your accumulated depreciation would stay the same, and your book value would stay the same. So even though we depreciated it before the end of the estimated life in years, right? We don't get rid of the asset. We could continue to use the asset, but it's just fully depreciated on the books. Okay, right? And that can happen quite often. You can fully depreciate an asset, but still continue to use it on the books. Okay, because it's still working, right? Remember, everything we did was based on estimates. Okay. Notice how in the double declining balance we get to take bigger expenses up front in the early years. Okay, sometimes people find this advantageous for tax purposes, right? If you are able to get these big charges early on, then you can lower your income tax. You don't have to pay as much income tax. Okay. Let's see, which method tracks the wear and tear of the equipment most closely? I think that would be an opinionated answer, but we'll go with this. I say units of production. Just because you're tying the depreciation to how much you've used the asset. Right? Let's